Imagine having the life of your dreams. Not temporary cash and glory, but happiness and inner peace. Explore new ways to be a creator and take your own journey into greatness. Is it possible? What does it take to make that happen? It takes the person known for extreme results. He's called the cage breaker and the ultimate catalyst. Coming back from the brink of death and now crushing it for himself and his clients, this is Your Ultimate Life Podcast with Kellan Fluckiger.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Your Ultimate Life, the podcast dedicated to helping you create the kind of life you want, a life of purpose, a life of prosperity, and a life of joy by using your life experience and the gifts that you have. I've got a special guest today, and I'm excited about that, and I'm going to introduce him in our picture here today. There we go, Dr. Mort Orman. Mort, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kellan.
I'm just thrilled to have you here. So Mort is a really interesting cat. He's got a long medical practice and some corporate experience and has done all kinds of amazing stuff. And rather than make an attempt to introduce him properly, I'm just going to let Mort tell you a little bit about himself. What do you do? Where have you been? And why are you here with us today?
Well, I'm here today because you invited me and I accepted. I've been a medical doctor for 50 years, internal medicine, and I had a private practice for 23 years, and then I worked for a Blue Cross and Blue Shield plan as a corporate medical director, a health and wellness medical director, among other duties. Over the last 40 years, I've also been helping people eliminate anger and stress from their lives so they can have the ultimate life without anger and stress in it. And that's mostly what I'm doing now, since I'm no longer, working professionally, as a physician, but I'm still a healer. So I'm still interested in helping people be healthy and well. And the best way I can do that now is to help them, reduce their stress and get rid of their anger so they don't get divorced and don't get alienated from their kids and don't lose their jobs or get passed over for promotions or things like that. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about anger and the importance of getting rid of it rather than managing it. So I don't believe in managing anger. I think that's a loser's game. I'm really interested in showing people there's another way to deal with anger, a better way, and that's what I like to talk about and open people's awareness to.
Cool. Well, we'll dig into that more deeply. So let's back up a little bit. What made you in the first place decide to enter the profession of healing? My brother's a doctor, and it takes a certain kind of person. So tell me what got you into medicine.
Well, it's a funny story actually, because I never wanted to be a doctor. I didn't grow up wanting to be a doctor. I actually grew up not wanting to be a doctor. I was getting pressure from my parents, who that's what they wanted me to be. But I didn't like anything about the whole profession. I mean, I didn't like sick people. I didn't like old people. I didn't like going to doctors' offices, getting shots. And I really didn't think I had the aptitude, to be a physician. I didn't think, I would be able to read, do all the reading that was necessary and studying. And I just didn't think I had the intellectual capability to function at that level, which I imagined was this extremely high level that was way beyond my capabilities. So I never, although I did like science, I got turned on to science at a very young age. And so when I went to college, I wanted the best science courses, and those were pre-med. So I enrolled in pre-med, made my parents happy, but I knew I wasn't ever going to go to medical school. And then, as I got towards graduating, I applied to medical school to make my parents happy. And I actually got accepted, but I knew I wasn't going. And I decided, late in my college career to be a biochemistry researcher. And so I made an appointment with the head of the biochemistry department at Duke, where I was undergrad, to get a position there. And I walked in, the guy didn't know me from Adam. I walked in, introduced myself, told him my story, told him how I got accepted to medical school. And what I really wanted to do was be a biochemistry researcher. And after my little preamble, and when his turn to speak, he looked me right in the eye, and he said, "Are you some kind of an idiot?"
Okay.
And
Very good.
what he meant was, don't you know that you'd be in a much better position to do biochemistry research with an MD degree than with a PhD degree, which I didn't know. And he said, don't you know that you can go to medical school and you don't have to be a doctor when you're done? A lot of people go to medical school and they don't end up practicing medicine. They do other things. I didn't know that either. So this guy, in like 15 minutes, he changed the trajectory of my life, because he basically said, what's the worst thing that can happen? You go to medical school, let's say after the first year you don't like it, come back here, I'll give you a position. So he just really did me a favor and showed me opened my eyes to some things that I really didn't know. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So I went, and to my surprise, I ended up liking it. I ended up getting turned on to practicing medicine, and then I really fell in love with it. And then that's what I've been doing ever since. I really, my life, I discovered my life purpose is to help people, improve their health and well-being. And that's what I've been doing the last 50 years. Everything
what
I
you're
do.
still doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything I do is in service of that life purpose.
So you said something really interesting. You said, in 15-minute conversation, he changed my life trajectory. He allowed me, or helped me see, something I hadn't considered or wasn't able to see before. And it strikes me as you say that's a lot of what I know about you in terms of both emotional stuff and particularly anger, helping people see stuff they wouldn't have seen otherwise. Is that true?
Yeah, that I didn't realize it then, but that became like the major theme for my life. So every big accomplishment I've had, every big breakthrough I've had, came from moments like that where I realized I was fundamentally wrong about something that I wasn't aware previously that I was wrong about. So he showed me that I was wrong about what it meant to go to medical school, and what the best career path was for a biochemistry researcher. And I didn't know that, or whatever idea I had was wrong, and he was giving me good advice. And I've had many other big breakthroughs along the way, where ultimately boiled down to me realizing I was totally wrong about something, or I didn't see something that I needed to see. And once I saw it, then that kind of opened the doors, and I was able to succeed in that area of life where I hadn't been able to succeed previously. So I've had some amazing breakthroughs like that. All came from literally being wrong. And it's funny, because as a doctor, what you're taught is the worst thing possible is to be wrong.
Well, I wanted to say something about that wrongness, because just in the conversation with you, and we've had other combos, but you use the word wrong in a very easy, fluid way. And lots of people, the word wrong is almost like a dirty word.
Yeah.
Like if you say somebody's wrong, it's like cussing at them or something. And yet you said, well, I've learned some of the greatest things in my life by learning I was completely wrong. And using it in the sense of what it just means to be incorrect about something. Yes. And I just wanted to call that out and have you talk a little bit more about destigmatizing the idea of being wrong. And it's even more interesting because you have the overlay of not supposed to be wrong as a doctor. So talk a little bit more about this wrong thing.
Yeah, it's more than an overlay. It was like 7 years of boot camp where every day it's drilled into you, don't be wrong, don't be wrong, don't be wrong. That's the worst thing you can do as a doctor is be wrong. Don't make a wrong diagnosis. Don't write the wrong prescription. Don't put the decimal point in the wrong place. You can kill somebody if you do that stuff. So everything in my training for 7 years was fortifying this belief that thou shalt not be wrong. And then what I discovered when I went out into practice and went out into life, I had all these issues with anger and anxiety and relationship failures and, struggling, with my own self-confidence and wanting to accomplish things and failing to do it. And it turned out almost every one of those areas, I didn't have a breakthrough until I was willing to be wrong. And I was blocked. It was like I was shut off from the key to success because originally I was so averse to considering that I'd be wrong about anything. And I was very well trained as a physician. So, in that arena, it's a good skill to have. But when in other areas of my life, like relationships, for example, I failed consistently at all my relationships with women. And it wasn't until I woke up one day and said, I wonder if I have some screwed up ideas about how to succeed in a relationship with women that aren't correct. And once I asked that question and then started exploring that, I found that yes, indeed, there were many ideas I had. I don't know where I got them from, but many ideas I had about how to function in a relationship that were really dysfunctional. And it wasn't until I recognized them and then said, okay, I need to find out what are some good strategies. And I sought out some experts and some people who knew a lot about relationships, learned some stuff from them, and realized those were better principles and better strategies than the ones that I had been operating from, thinking I was right when I was actually wrong. So then I had the huge breakthrough in my area of relationships. I've now been married to my wife for 39 years, which never would have happened if I hadn't been willing to admit to myself that I had bad ideas about relationships and that I was wrong about a lot of stuff, and I needed to find out what were some good ideas. And I've done that not just in relationships, but that's how I cured my anger problem. That's how I cured my tremendous fear of public speaking. I mean, I would have never volunteered to do something like this in my 20s and 30s because I was just petrified to speak in public. But I found out what I was wrong about public speaking, and that enabled me to turn things around. And now it's something I do all the time, and I feel very comfortable doing. But it wasn't. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how important is it? Like, we're talking about creating a life that you enjoy, purpose, prosperity, and joy, making a difference and all that. How important is it in your experience and in what you teach to be okay, to be non-drama okay with being wrong about stuff?
Like I said, I think it's essential. I think because firstly, so I'm a doctor. I'm into biology. I'm into the way the brain works. I'm into the way the body works. And if you really look honestly at the brain and the body, we are biologically predetermined to be wrong. We have lots of blind spots. We get programmed with lots of ideas that we get from other people who may not have been correct in what they were programming into us. We get programmed by the media every day, by advertisers every day. We get all these inputs that get incorporated into our bodies and our brains that make us wrong about a lot of stuff. And then we have this penchant for wanting to believe we're right. It's interesting because we're basically wrong a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And we've got this ego that wants us to be right, so we don't make the normal corrections that an individual would make. So if you're physically blind and you can't see, you go out and you get a seeing eye dog, or you get a cane, or you do whatever you need to do to adjust to your deficit. But we have these blind spots all over the place that we don't correct for because we keep thinking we're right, when in reality we need to examine a lot of the things we think we're right about. And that's how we actually get to be right. It's funny, it's like a paradox. You get by willing to be wrong, you actually get to be righter. And then the next thing you're right about may turn out to be wrong. But if you're willing to do that, then you get to a higher level of seeing what's real and what's true and how things function. So it's like a never-ending process of questioning what you currently believe because it changes. My first day of medical school, day one, okay? 144 young medical students are assembled, on our first day of school before we go to our class and everything. And the dean greets us and welcomes us and congratulates us. And then he said, by the way, I have some bad news for you. He said, 50% of what we're going to teach you, and this is scientific medicine, what we're going to teach you in the next 4 years is going to turn out to be wrong. I can't tell you right now which 50% that's going to be. and he was right. He was right. And you could make that same statement to any medical school in the country today, to the incoming class, and you can tell them 50% of what you're going to learn is ultimately going to turn out to be wrong, and we don't know which it is yet. But that's the nature of, and that's one of the highest levels of knowledge that we have. Scientific medicine is one of the highest levels of certainty and knowledge that we have, and it's still uncertain. It's still got a lot of things that change over time and evolve over time, and we have to keep reevaluating our ideas and our theories and adopting new ones that hopefully work better.
So this is wonderful. Thank you for all of that. Now, as you've practiced medicine, and I always find it interesting practicing law and practicing medicine. I practiced the piano for a long time too, and so you practice these things, right? And hopefully you get better at it and figure out which 50% are the wrong notes. Yeah. So you have become, through your own experience and need, particularly good at adding good to the world by helping people understand anger, the emotion, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, the reactions, the causes, that thing you said a minute ago, the penchant to believe we're right, and that adds a huge dimension of problem to the whole anger thing, because we think we're right about stuff. What drove you to, or invited you, or drove you to be, besides your work in internal medicine and helping people with bodies and stuff, what drew you to the anger stuff?
Well, a couple things. First, I was fortunate. I had a professor in freshman year of medical school who was a pioneer in psychosomatic medicine, and he was a great teacher. He was really a guy we all looked up to in our class, and we thought he just could walked on water, with his ability to very effortlessly move between the medical questioning and psychological questioning. He was board certified in internal medicine, and then he got board certified in psychiatry. So he could move back and forth between the mental and the physical. And so that got me interested right off the bat in appreciating the role that mental processes play in physical illnesses and vice versa. And then when I got into college and into medical school, I started having my own anger issues. And then I went into practice, and I still struggled with anger and anxiety myself personally, but then I'm taking care of patients. And, you notice as a doctor, which people are kind of on the angry side and which people are more mellow, and more calm and more, okay with things the way they are. And you see what happens to them over time. Most people, when they go to work, they don't have that perspective, But when a doctor goes over, we see what happens to people's health, and also they tell us what's going on in their families and in their careers and everything. And you can see that the angry people have many more divorces. They have many more, conflicts with their kids, and many more, difficulties at work, or they get fired, or they lose their job. And you see this. And you see the people who aren't really angry don't have as much of that. And then you realize, I've got anger. I think I see this train that's coming down the tracks heading for me.
So you mentioned, I want to dive into there for a minute, because it's certainly clear that as a doctor, you would see, you'd be able to tell quickly people that are able to accept what is and live there more, and people that are angry about what is.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference in the effects. But you mentioned, just in passing, that you had your own anger issues. And you mentioned earlier that you had trouble to start with, with relationships. So talk a little bit about what you noticed in yourself that then, had the correlation with people. But what were the anger issues that were present for you?
Well, for example, I took up tennis in my late 20s. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you ever saw John McEnroe play tennis.
I did see him play McEnroe. Yeah. I saw the marathon match between him and Bjorn Borg and the whole night. Yeah.
Well, I was like John McEnroe on the tennis, not in terms of tennis prowess, but in terms of the anger that he exhibits on court. If I made a bad shot, I would yell and scream at myself. I would smash my racket around whatever was close to me. I would annoy the people playing on either side of me, and I couldn't control it. That was really the big thing. I saw myself doing these things. It was like the anger just took me over and just made me yell and scream at myself and berate myself. It just seemed uncontrollable. And I tried all the standard stuff, the anger management stuff, the stress management stuff, the relaxation. Didn't matter. The next, every day I woke up, I was the same angry guy. So I had the anger problem, which is I would get angry at my patients from time to time if they wouldn't follow my advice or they did stupid things. It ruined a lot of my relationships. That was a big part of the relationship thing, was the anger, and I just felt like, you're a successful physician, you're successful professionally, but inside I didn't feel successful because I kept battling these demons that I couldn't beat. And I had always been able to win at stuff that I put my mind to, and these emotions and these relationship things were something I kept knocking my head against the wall. I couldn't break through. I couldn't get the success I wanted, so that kept driving me to search for answers. I also had the good fortune to grow up in Baltimore in the 1950s, and I got to watch Johnny Unitas play for the Baltimore Colts. And just watching him over the years, he gave me this winning attitude. Unitas was the kind of guy, didn't matter what the score was, how far behind they were, he would figure out a way to win the game. And more often than not, he would do that, and I remember just watching him, I got that can do, eventually I'm going to figure it out somehow, some way, I'm going to drive to victory. And he gave that to me as a young kid. Wow. And that's actually helped me all through my career. When I ran into difficult obstacles along my path, I just had this, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it happen. And sure enough, one way or another, I did. So that was driving me also. That influence kept pushing me to not give up, where a lot of people might just say, that's just who I am. I'm just an angry guy. I'm always going to be an angry guy. And, that'll just come be at peace with it. No, I just kept pushing. I said, there's got to be an answer. There's got to be a solution. And then I started doing personal development work. And after a couple of years of that, I started pulling together pieces from different experts, different people I'd studied with. Eventually, I got cobbled something together that looked like it would work. And I tested it out. And sure enough, it worked. It enabled me to get at some of those internal causes of anger that I hadn't seen before, that I wasn't aware of. It enabled me to realize how wrong I was most of the time when I was angry, because anger you feel right when you're angry. You feel justified.
You do, and this goes back to where we were before about the being right is a big part of this. So tell us now about what you cobbled together. What is this thing that because it's really unusual. Like, I'm a coach, you're a coach. Mm-hmm. We work with people to blind spots and help see things they're not seeing and all that kind of stuff. And you took the initiative, you got your positive attitude from a football hero and all that stuff. Tell us about what you put together to see things you couldn't see before and to learn to love being wrong.
Yeah. So again, I didn't realize when I was in my angry years, which was my 20s and mid 30s, I didn't realize where the anger was actually being generated from. It looked like it was being generated from the things I was seeing that I didn't like, or the things that I was looking at myself I didn't like. But if I saw somebody doing something bad or wrong, or something they shouldn't be doing, and it was unfair, that would trigger the anger. And I thought that that's all there was to it. I didn't realize that also was getting triggered inside me were certain ways of perceiving, certain ways of thinking that was creating the anger inside me. So it really wasn't coming from the outside, it was being created inside. So that was a new insight. And then to figure out exactly how I was creating the anger inside, specific ways I was thinking and perceiving, so that I could know whenever I'm angry, I'm thinking A, B, C, and D. And then I could start to examine those to see, is it true? Is A true? Is B true? Is C true? Is D true? And I would find out in that process, wow, some of these things I automatically assumed were true weren't actually true. And that's where you get to find out, you're wrong about something. But until you know what that formula is that's causing the anger, and exactly what the thought structures are, or perceptual structures are, you don't know what questions to ask, or you don't know what things you say, is this true? Is that true? Is that true? Until you know what they are. So that's what I eventually was able to, Yeah,
I want to hear the questions I don't know to ask. I want to have the shortcut to your learning. What are the questions I need to be asking?
Okay, so the first thing is, when we're angry, we're looking in a way that we see whatever's going on as being bad or wrong, or somebody doing something they shouldn't have done. So that's the first core element that causes anger. The second core element is that somebody or something is being hurt or harmed or negatively impacted by whatever the bad and wrong thing is that person's doing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the third key element is that whoever's doing the bad and wrong thing, causing the hurt and harm, is pretty much totally responsible or to blame for what they're doing and the harm they're causing. Okay. So if you're in a grocery store and you look down the aisle and you see a mother and they have a young child misbehaving, and the mother hauls off and slaps the child in anger, and you get angry, why did you get angry? You got angry because you saw it as the mother doing something bad and wrong. She shouldn't have slapped the child. The child was obviously hurt or harmed, physically being slapped, and also maybe long-term harm. And the mother was totally responsible for choosing to take that action. And when you see it that way, you may have the internal experience of anger. But what's interesting is you could be in the grocery store with a friend who's standing right next to you. They see the same event and they don't get angry at all. They may have a different philosophy about parenting. They may think that was good parenting, that was a good thing to do, that the kid's going to be better off in the long run, and that the mother wasn't totally to blame. The kid misbehaved, and that was part of the equation that you have to factor in. It wasn't just the mother, it was the kid too. So, which would have been a blind spot when you're angry. You don't see that, you don't focus on that too much. You're just focusing on the mother. So you can have two people look at the same event and one gets angry, one doesn't. It's those internal filters or internal ways of perceiving is what's causing it. And I never appreciated that before, nor did I know it was those three specific things. So now whenever I get angry, I have three questions to ask myself. Did the person really do something that was bad and wrong? Was somebody really hurt or harmed or negatively impacted? And was that person totally 100% responsible or to blame, or were there other factors involved? And when you start asking those questions, it's very interesting what you discover, if you're honest. It's big if there.
Right.
If you're honest, you discover that there's blind spots galore in those three, automatic triggered ways of looking at things, and that it leaves out a lot of the reality of what actually went on that you don't see. It's like you have these narrow blinders on, and you see it in a very narrow way, and that's causing your anger. And when you expand your field of vision, take in more of what actually happened, you go like, oh, wait a second, this has a different flavor to it now, or the context changes now, and I see it differently, and now it's not something to be angry about because I'm seeing it more truthfully than I was when I was angry.
What is the thing we talked about earlier about believing that you're right? That sense, we've talked before about the stamp of rightness, or when you believe you're, what does that how does that factor into this process?
Well, when you think about it, it's in our genetics. When you think about it, we had to develop that ability because our brains were designed to think real quick in these either or ways, good or bad, friend or foe, threat or not threat. We had to make these quick decisions in order to survive. And whatever you decided, you had to act on it. You had to assume it was right. You couldn't be, in this gray zone. You couldn't be in this, well, let me evaluate. Let me get some more data. Let me see what happens, because you'd be eaten by that time.
Right.
So you had our brains evolved simultaneously this either or patterns of thinking, among other things. And quickly deciding, whatever we decide, we got to assume it's right because we got to move on it and act on it. And if it's not a threat and we ran away and we were wrong, no problem, we're still alive. Okay, but if we stuck around and tried to figure it out and get more data and all that, get more information, it could be too late by that point. So evolutionary wise, our brains developed this way, and we still have those same brains with a lot of the stuff from millions of years ago that's gotten passed on, and that's how we automatically react and think in a lot of ways, and that's where a lot of the blind spots come from.
So this is spectacular. I want to make sure that, and so from this, you've developed a system and a course that not only applied to you because you got these learnings and you cured your own anger issues. You've been married 39 years, which, is spectacular as an accomplishment few ever achieve. And my hat is honestly off to you for that. That's spectacular. I've met your wife, and so that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, so I want you to tell people two things: where to find more about Mort, where to find about your anger elimination. And you said that earlier, and I want you to emphasize that again. Elimination, not management. So anger elimination process. So how to get a hold of you, how to find out more about the amazing Dr. Mort and his anger work.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of myths and misconceptions about anger, and one of them is there's only two ways to deal with it. You either express it or you suppress it, and neither one of them is great. Okay, sometimes expressing anger can get you in trouble, and if you sit on your anger and suppress it, it has a way of causing problems and leaking out when you don't want it to and stuff like that. The problem is there's not just two ways to deal with anger. There's a third way, which is what we've been talking about here. But you can actually make anger disappear by telling the truth about what's gotten triggered inside you that may not be true, that's making you angry. Okay? And if you can do the process of what we've been talking about, you can literally make your anger go away so that there's no issue about, do I suppress it? Do I express it? It's not there anymore. You're not angry anymore. Okay? You can literally make anger go away. You can literally eliminate it. And you can go back and things you may be carrying around for years that you've been angry about, you can do this process and you can see what you didn't see back then. And now you can see it in a new light. You go, oh, okay, I'm not so angry anymore about that because I'm seeing it different.
That's such a powerful thing. I just want to make sure it's not something you have to do right now. If you remember things you're angry about, and you reevaluate them in light of more truthful questions and, questioning the I'm always right stamp and all the rest of it, you can eliminate from your body, which is that chemistry and that feeling of tension and the neurotransmitters and all the stuff that goes with it, go away. It's gone. So I don't have to fight with it or eliminate it.
You still have to fight with it because what happens, again, our bodies are programmed. So you can eliminate it in the moment and then it may come back. Okay. But when it comes back, once you've gone through this process and you know what's true and what's not true, and it comes back, you just have to repeat the process again. But it's easier because you now know what the answers are. You know what's true and what's not true. But it may still keep coming back for a while before it extinguishes itself. But eventually it can extinguish itself. I mean, when I started doing this work 40 years ago on myself, it was like that. It was like whack-a-mole. You keep knocking it down and it keeps popping back up, and you knock it down and it keeps popping back up. Now, over most of the last 40 years, I've gotten rid of most of that anger. Things don't trigger me like they used to. I don't get angry over things I used to get angry at. But it took some time for that to actually happen, for my body to change. And it doesn't change quickly. So it can take a year or two or something of frequently doing this. But anyhow, so so the way people can find out more about me and the anger elimination program, and it's a 10-session program. It only takes 10 one-hour sessions of coaching to teach people this system that I developed 40 years ago and been using ever since and been teaching ever since. And you can master it in 10 one-hour sessions. And then you have the system for the rest of your life to use whenever you get angry. You'll know what the causes are, and you'll know how to deal with them. You'll know how to dig in and see what's true and what's not true. So anyhow, that's what I teach people to do. You can find out more about that and also get on my email list where you can communicate with me if you want by just simply going to theangersolution.org, theangersolution.org. And you can download a free report that tells you more about anger and more about my program and how you can get in touch with me if you want to talk to me about it. And it'll also immediately get you on my email list where I send emails out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on a topic that I pick for the week, and I break it in 3 parts. And if that's not something you want to stay on, you can always, sign off of that and not get those emails. But I've been doing that for like 13 years now, and people are still on it and they like it, and not that many drop off. So, but it's optional.
Well, Mort, I just really want to thank you. I can say I've been on your email list for a long time, and I really enjoy the emails that you send. And I want to also thank you for your work, for your heart, for your compassion, and for the work that you're doing in the world. theangersolution.org. Check it out if anger's getting in the way of your life. Mort, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, Kellan.
Now, to the listeners, as we wrap this up, I want to encourage you to go through this. Mort's friendly, he's loving, he's kind, and he's dead serious about this work and about how it works and about the changes that it can create in your life. And I know from my own experience and from knowing Mort for some time that this tool will be a pivotal piece and allow you to create more quickly your ultimate life.
Open your heart and this time around, stand.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope that you take it deeply into your heart and decide for yourself how you can create anything you desire. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback and topic suggestions. Until tomorrow, this is Your Ultimate Life with host Kellan Fluckiger.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on